The smartest people in the room are often the quietest, not because they have nothing to say, but because they're still deciding what's actually worth saying. Most people misunderstand this. They think intelligence shows up as speed, quick answers, immediate reactions, constant input. So they train themselves to respond fast, to avoid silence, to prove they're paying attention. But something subtle gets lost because real thinking doesn't happen at the same speed as conversation. It needs space, a short pause, a moment where the mind can connect things that are not obvious yet. And that's where the difference begins. A fast response is not always a clear one. A loud voice is not always a thoughtful one. In fact, the more someone understands, the more they realize how incomplete every moment is. There's always missing context, unseen variables, things that haven't been said yet. So instead of rushing in, they wait, not because they are slow, but because they are filtering. They are not trying to impress. They are trying to be precise. And precision takes time. This creates a quiet contradiction. The more intelligent someone becomes, the less urgency they feel to speak, because they stop seeing conversations as something to win. They start seeing them as something to understand, a space where people reveal how they think, where patterns appear if you don't interrupt them too early. So they listen a little longer, observe a little deeper. From the outside, it looks like silence, but inside, it's active. Ideas are being tested. Connections are forming. Words are being chosen carefully before they are spoken, because to them, words are not just sound. They carry meaning. And once said, they cannot be taken back. So they use them with intention. But here's the part most people miss. If you grow up in a world that rewards speed, you start to question this behavior. You'll wonder why you don't react as fast, why you need a moment to think. So you try to adapt. You rush your thoughts. You speak before you're ready. You interrupt your own process just to keep up. And slowly, thinking starts to feel heavy. Not because you're thinking too much, but because you're thinking in the wrong conditions. A strong mind in a noisy system will always feel inefficient. So maybe the goal is not to think faster. Maybe the goal is to stop rushing how you think. You've probably experienced this before. You sit down to do something important, a task you actually care about. You open your laptop. 1 tab becomes 3. 3 becomes 10. You tell yourself you're researching, but deep down, you know you're drifting. A notification appears. You check it, then another, and somehow 30 minutes disappear. You try to come back, but now your mind feels scattered. So you switch tasks, maybe something easier, something that doesn't require as much thinking, and for a moment, it feels better. Less resistance, less pressure. But at the end of the day, there's a quiet frustration because you know you didn't really move forward. So you make a plan. Tomorrow will be different. You'll be more disciplined, more focused. But the next day, the same pattern repeats. Not exactly the same, but close enough. And over time, a belief starts to form. Maybe I'm just not disciplined enough. Maybe I get distracted too easily. Maybe I'm the problem. But here's what most people get wrong. This is not a discipline problem. It's a system problem. Your brain is not designed to operate in constant interruption. It's not built to handle unlimited inputs, while also producing clear output. When you open multiple tabs, you're not just switching tasks. You're fragmenting attention. Each tab holds a small piece of your focus, even when you're not looking at it anymore. So your mind never fully returns to one place. It stays partially everywhere. And that creates mental noise. Now add expectations on top of that. Be productive. Be fast. Be consistent. So you push harder. Try to force focus. Force clarity. But the environment stays the same. Too many inputs. Too many decisions. Too many open loops. So the harder you try, the more resistance you feel. This is where overthinking begins to turn against you. Because a deep mind in a chaotic environment doesn't become more effective. It becomes overwhelmed. You start thinking about everything at once. All the possibilities, all the things you haven't done yet. Instead of clarity, you get pressure. So you avoid, not because you're lazy, but because your system is overloaded. This is the hidden cost of having a mind that notices more. Without structure, awareness becomes weight. You see more problems, more options, more outcomes, but you don't have a clear path through them. So you stall and then blame yourself for it. But the truth is simpler. You're not bad at focus. You're just operating in an environment that was never designed for deep thinking in the first place. So instead of trying to control your mind, you build a system that supports it. Not complicated, not perfect, just enough structure to reduce friction. 3 simple shifts. First, externalize everything. Your brain is not designed to store endless thoughts. It's designed to process them, but most people try to do both at the same time. They keep ideas in their head, tasks in their head, problems in their head, and then wonder why everything feels heavy. So you take it out. A notebook, a notes app, anything simple. When a thought appears, you capture it, not organize, not judge, just capture. This does one important thing. It closes the loop. Your brain no longer needs to hold it. And when the load drops, clarity increases naturally. Second, create thinking windows. Not all day, not randomly between distractions, just 1 or 2 protected blocks. No notifications, no switching, no input. Just you and one problem. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your mind will try to escape. Look for stimulation. Open another tab. That's normal because it's used to noise. But if you stay, something shifts. The noise settles. Thoughts become slower, but deeper. This is where real thinking happens. Not fast, not loud. Just clear. Third, reduce unnecessary decisions. Most people waste mental energy before they even start working. What to do first, where to start, how to begin. Too many small decisions drain focus before it's even used. So you simplify. Same starting ritual, same workspace, same first task. Every day. No thinking required. Imagine a stick figure sitting at a clean desk. 1 notebook, 1 pen, 1 clear task in front. No clutter, no options. The moment they sit down, they begin. No hesitation. That's the goal. Not more motivation. Less resistance to start. Because once you start, focus becomes easier. Perfect, but stable enough to continue. And that's all you need. System that doesn't rely on how you feel. Just something simple that works even when you don't. If you stay with this system, something quiet begins to change. Not overnight, not in a dramatic way, but gradually. Your mind feels lighter. You don't wake up thinking about everything at once anymore. There's less pressure to figure out your whole life before the day even starts, because now there's a place for your thoughts, a time for your thinking, a structure for your attention. So your brain stops trying to do everything all the time. And that alone reduces a surprising amount of stress. You begin to notice small differences. You sit down to work, and instead of resistance, there's a clear starting point, not motivation, just clarity. You don't need to force yourself as much because the system removes the friction before it appears. Over time, this builds something more important than intensity. It builds trust. Trust that when you show up, you will know what to do. Trust that your mind won't spiral into noise the moment things get complex. And that trust changes how you feel about work. It no longer feels like something you have to fight. It becomes something you can enter calmly. Your thinking also becomes sharper, not because you're pushing harder, but because you're no longer wasting energy on unnecessary loops. You think about one thing at a time. You follow it through. You finish more thoughts than you start. And that creates a sense of progress that used to be missing. Not big wins. Not sudden breakthroughs. Just small, completed cycles. Again and again. This is where consistency starts to compound. Quietly. While others rely on bursts of motivation. You rely on a system that works, even on low energy days. So you don't burn out as often. You don't feel the same guilt after an unproductive day, because even your bad days still have structure. Still have a place to restart. And maybe the biggest shift is this. You stop seeing your mind as a problem. You stop trying to fix how you think, because now it finally has the space to work the way it was meant to. Deep focus, deliberate, not rushed, not scattered. Just clear. And that clarity over weeks and months quietly changes everything. At some point, you notice something. It's not dramatic. No sudden breakthrough, just a quiet shift. You realize the problem was never your ability to think. It was how your thinking was being used. For a long time, you believed that if you just tried harder, you would finally feel in control. More effort, more discipline, more pressure. But effort didn't fix it, because effort doesn't organize chaos. It only pushes against it. And eventually, you get tired. That's when the realization starts to form. Maybe clarity doesn't come from thinking more. Maybe it comes from thinking less, but better. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every idea needs to be explored immediately. And not every problem needs to be solved right now. This is where the shift happens. You stop treating your mind like an endless workspace and start treating it like a limited resource. Something that needs boundaries. Because without boundaries, even a powerful mind becomes inefficient. You begin to see the pattern. The moments you feel most overwhelmed are not when things are hardest. They are when everything is open at the same time. Too many choices, too many directions, too many unfinished loops, and your brain tries to hold all of it simultaneously. That's not intelligence. That's overload. So instead of asking, how do I think faster? A different question appears. What should I not think about right now? That question changes everything. Because now, thinking becomes selective. You start closing loops, reducing inputs, letting go of things that don't matter in this moment. And suddenly, your mind feels different. Not empty, but clear. There's space again. You can follow one idea without being pulled in 5 directions. You can stay with a problem long enough to actually understand it. This is when overthinking transforms thought. It stops being a loop and starts becoming a tool. Instead of circling the same thoughts, you move through layers. You explore, then simplify. You analyze, then decide, and something else becomes clear. The people who seem naturally focused are not thinking more than you. They're thinking with constraints. They built invisible boundaries around their attention. So their mind doesn't have to fight everything at once. It only deals with what's in front of it. This is the moment where you stop blaming yourself because you finally see it. You were never lacking discipline. You were lacking a system that protects your thinking. And once you see that, you stop trying to fix your mind. And start designing the conditions where your mind can actually work. Most people spend years trying to fix themselves. They try to become more disciplined, more focused, more motivated, but they rarely question the system they're operating in. So they keep pushing inside the same structure that keeps draining them. And when it doesn't work, they assume the problem is personal. But maybe it's not. Maybe you were never meant to function in constant noise. Maybe your mind was never designed to handle endless inputs without boundaries. And maybe nothing is wrong with you. You just built your days around the wrong conditions. Because when the system changes, behavior changes without force. Focus becomes easier. Clarity becomes natural. Thinking becomes lighter. Not because you tried harder, but because you removed what was getting in the way. This is the part most people overlook. You don't need a new personality. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer distractions, fewer decisions, and a structure that protects your attention. That's it. Simple, but not obvious. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, because every moment of overwhelm starts to look different, not as a personal failure, but as a signal that something in your system needs adjustment. So instead of blaming yourself, you refine the structure. Small changes, one piece at a time. And over time, those small changes become a different way of living, quieter, clearer, more intentional. You don't need to become someone else. You just need a system that allows you to be at your best consistently. If you've ever felt stuck inside your own thinking, comment system. And if you want to keep refining how you think, work, and live, subscribe. One small shift at a time.